borom ket ak luaskat moo nekk di daw ñun am ay one who's supposed to fix it. I'll fix it. Wait, 300 kese. You made your expense. Bana. Hello. Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you hearing the lecturer?
Who's speaking?
It's Omar. It's not the lecturer. It's Omar.
Oh, I can hear you, Omar, but I cannot hear the lecturer.
Yeah, I don't know if he's aware. I sent it. I just texted it. Let me text it again in the group. Hopefully he'll hear it. You can just see scrolling.
Omar?
Yes.
Are you the
Hello.
one recording the session?
No. It's the lecturer recording.
Oh, okay.
If he is
I
close
also
to
text him.
yeah, if he's close to the laptop in any way, he'll be able to hear it. I think perhaps he left it scrolling and perhaps went out or something.
Yeah, I don't think he is with
Yeah.
his laptop at the moment. I don't think he is with us. I tried to
No.
send him a message on WhatsApp telling him that his mic is not audible, but
Yeah,
I
tell
think
him
he
that
received, yeah.
like we are seeing the screen, but then the mic is not on, and perhaps he'll
I think
notice.
what we could do is to leave and then come back again. Maybe that way we can be able to hear from him.
Well, he's scrolling to be honest, and he's not checking the text. I can see the mouse, like the pointer, rolling.
Yeah, he is scrolling, of course. I sent him a message via WhatsApp
Okay.
too, and it has
Wait,
been delivered. But
did you already send the message on WhatsApp?
yes, it has been delivered. He read it, but I don't think
Oh, okay.
he has seen it.
Mohamed, ko jali woni don. Wait, did he read? Can you verify if he read the message?
Let me check.
All right, cool. No? Ay, wala nang guy. Wala din ni yun ang jam din niya orang mo.
He has not read it yet.
Okay. I'm leaving right now to call him and let him know, okay?
All right.
Cool.
Okay. Like I was explaining, the switch has what you call the switch virtual interface. It is mainly for management of the switch. Like I said, by default, the switch doesn't need any IP address to function, but you only give it an IP address if you want to be able to manage the switch. I hope I'm audible now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after you have given a switch an IP address for management purpose, you can save the configuration as in this command, copy running configuration and startup configuration. Because what happened when you do any changes on the switch, the configuration is stored in the running configuration, and the running configuration is in the RAM. So to be able to configure, to be able to save it permanently, you have to write this command. That is, you are copying the running configuration into the startup configuration, because the startup configuration is saved permanently. That is where that is stored in the ROM. So that is it. But okay, you know, switch operate in a local area network. So if you want to be able to manage the switch from a different network, you have to configure a default gateway. You can see the previous configuration, no default gateway is configured here. But if you want to be able to manage the switch from a different network, you have to configure a default gateway. That is using this command, IP default gateway, and the IP address of the default gateway. So the same thing, after every configuration, you want to verify. You use the show commands to verify. You want to verify what you have configured. So you can type the command show IP interface brief. That is going to show you all the all the interfaces that are configured and those that are not configured. So you can see here, we only have one interface, that is VLAN 99 with an IP address. So that is it for. So now we move to configuring switch ports. How do you configure a switch port? Switch ports, you can manage your switch ports. You can configure different settings as in duplex or speed of the switch port. Every switch port, it depends on the type of port, whether it's a fast Ethernet switch or it's a gigabit Ethernet. So it used to have its default settings, but you can change these default settings, okay? You can also change the default settings from half duplex to full duplex or vice versa. So we will see all this in practice when we do the lab. So you can see the switch here. These are two switches that are connected by a trunk cable, okay? But here, these ports are configured with full duplex and 100 Mbps, 100 megabits per second. So, but how do you manipulate it, or how do you change these settings? You can go into the global configuration of the switch and go inside the interface that you want to change. As in here, you have fast Ethernet 0/1. So to go into this interface, you type the command interface fast Ethernet 0/1. The moment you are in the interface configuration mode, you can change the duplex with this command, duplex full or duplex half. You can also change the speed with this command, speed 10 or speed 100. Okay? So when it is an Ethernet port, the default is 10 Mbps. If it is a fast Ethernet, the default is 100 Mbps. Okay, if it is a gigabit, The default is 1000 Mbps. I hope you are following. So we have what you call as auto MDIX. Well, we have what you call as auto MDIX, okay? Auto MDIX, if you, in your last trimester of Fundamentals 1, you will realize when you talk about different cable types, crossover, straight through cables, we said in Fundamentals 1 that straight through cables are used to connect like devices, no, unlike devices. Straight through cables are used to connect unlike devices. That is, if you want to connect a switch to the computer, you use a straight through cable because they are unlike devices. If you want to connect a router to the switch, you use straight through cable because they are unlike devices. But when you want to connect similar devices, let's say 2 switches together, you have to use a crossover cable. So AutoMDIX came in to at least solve this constraint, because this is a constraint of using different type of cables. So you can configure AutoMDIX such that even if it should be a straight through cable and you put a crossover cable, the switch will adjust to that settings. Okay. So you have another verification commands. All these are different verification commands that you can use to check your switch settings. Let's say show interfaces will display interface status and configurations. So startup configuration will display the current active configuration, like I told you. So startup configuration will display the current startup configuration. And so running configuration will display the running configuration. So flash will display the information about the flash file system. And so version will display the hardware and the software status. So you can use all these verification commands to verify whatever you want. So MAC address table will give you the content of the MAC address. So the verification command still continues. Verify switch port settings. You can still use the verification commands on them. Network layer access issues. Okay. There can be some network layer, some access issues. You have to use so interface, the particular interface you are looking for. This command will give you a lot of information as to what is happening on that interface, as to how much traffic it is sending, whether there are some errors happening on that interface. You can see all those informations there. Okay. So you can see these are the possible errors that can happen on that interface. Let's say input errors, runs, giant CRCs, output errors, collusions, or late collusion. These are all the errors that can happen on an interface. And by using show interface, that particular interface and the level, you'll be able to see these errors if they exist. Okay. So these are all those errors. We'll move on. Okay, troubleshooting, like this is a flow chart sort of. What steps do you have to take when there is a problem? What are the troubleshooting steps? For instance, when as a network administrator, somebody just walked in and said, we don't have internet access. What are the troubleshooting steps you would have to take? First, like I told you here, you have to make best use of your show interface command. Because the show interface command will give you the status of that interface, whether the interface is up or down. So when you come to this symbol, diamond, this is a decision symbol from flowchart. When the interface is down, then you have to check and verify your connectors, your cables. But when the interface is still up, you have to check whether there is no noise or EMI, that is electromagnetic interference. Or you have to check your duplex settings, whether there is a duplex mismatch, because there can be a duplex mismatch, okay? If all this is not the case, you go down and check if the problem is solved. If the problem is solved, you're done. If the problem is not solved, you document the work and escalate it, maybe give it to your engineers. They will also look at it. So secure remote access. How do you access your equipments in a very secure way remotely? Telnet operations. Telnet is a remote management tool that works on TCP port 23, okay? But the use of Telnet is discouraged because Telnet sends all your information in plain text. That is, Telnet will send your username and password in plain text and all the data that you will come sending. So that is why the use of Telnet is highly discouraged. You also have SSH. SSH works on TCP port 22. SSH provides a very secure management connection to a remote device. SSH should replace Telnet for management because it is a secure one. It will encrypt your username and password to the remote device. To verify switch support SSH, you can use this command, show version. So version will give you the version of the Cisco iOS software you're using. You can see here and the release, the version and the release. You can see here, we are using 15.0, okay? So how do you configure SSH? We will do this in practice, okay? Don't worry about that. We'll configure SSH and Telnet, okay? How do you verify the version of SSH you are using? So IP SSH will give you the version. You can see here, we are using version 2.0. All right, that is done. Now we move to basic router configuration. Configure basic router settings. That is, how do you configure host name of the router? How do you configure, or how do you configure a password? Enable password. How do you configure enable password? How do you configure console password? How do you configure Telnet and SSH? Okay. And also, how do you configure banner messages? What are banner messages? These are legal notification for unauthorized access. Banner messages are legal notification for unauthorized access. Okay, so the same thing, after every configuration, you have to save the configuration by using the command copy running config startup config. Okay, so dual stack topology, you can configure a topology on both IPv4 and IPv6. You can configure all of them on the same devices. on both IPv4 and IPv6. So how do you configure router interface? Every interface of a router has a label. An interface can also be called as port. So that is, every port of a router has a label. Before you can configure that port or that label, that interface, you should try to know the label on that interface. It's very important. Because if you don't know that label, you might find it difficult to be able to configure that interface. Or you can jump into a wrong interface and then everything will be mixed up. So keep this at the back of your mind, that for you to be able to configure a particular interface or port, you must look at the label of that port. So you can see here, an example is here. We want to configure router interface. This is the interface type. The interface is a gigabit type, and this is the level, 0/0/0. So from the global configuration mode, you type interface gigabit 0/0/0, and then you have to give an IP address. This is an example of an IPv4 address. Like I told you, in dual stack topology, you can also give an IPv6 address. You can as well give a description of that link. That is going to help you when you are working on that link, or for people that will come after you. You can give a description of what is the purpose of that link. Okay? So I know we have very few minutes again, but when it stops, we have to activate another link. So you also have IPv4 loopback interfaces. Loopback interfaces are mainly used for testing purposes. Loopback interfaces are known as logical interface, but in most of the case, they are used for management and testing. They are used for management and testing purpose. It is not a physical interface, it is a loopback interface. Why do we use it for management and testing? Because the loopback interface will never go down as long as the router is up. But you know, the physical interface, when the cable has a problem, you not have access. When the cable is pulled back, you not have access. But the loopback interface will always be up and running so long as the router is up and running. So that is why it is used for management and testing purpose. So the next one is directly connected networks. How do you verify directly connected networks? Every router by default will know about the directly connected networks. The moment a network is directly connected, the router will know it immediately. It's going to land. You don't need any routing protocol to inform the router about a directly connected network. Okay? So the same commands are there. So IP interface brief. This is going to give you the list of all the ports, their numbers, their status, and whether they are assigned or unassigned. Okay. So you can also verify the IPv6 link local and multicast address. These are all verification commands. You can play with them after our lab. So IP route, it will give you the content of the routing table. What is a routing table? This is an entry that will give you the networks that your router know about or your router has learned. The routing table will show you all the networks that your router has learned, whether there is a static route or directly connected route or their dynamic route will be in the routing table. So the same thing. These are filter commands, filter show commands. The filter, you use the pipe symbol. This is the pipe symbol. Huh? Basically what it does is to send you exactly the information you are looking for. Because some routers, if you look at their configuration, is several pages. So you don't want to scroll through those several pages. You are looking for something and you want that information only to be on your screen. So you use the filter show command output. So the history command is a useful one because it will temporarily store a list of commands that you have executed before. So I think that is all for this slide. So we will activate another Zoom and we move to chapter 2. Anything for now?